There is a particular kind of memory that returns to you years later. Uninvited, usually in the quiet before sleep. You remember a person, and you remember the exact moment when something in you went still and watchful. A moment so brief you barely registered it at the time. When a word landed slightly wrong, or a smile arrived a fraction too late, or a story they told did not quite fit together. You felt it, and then you did something that human beings do with terrible reliability. You explained it away. You told yourself you were being suspicious, or unfair, or that you were projecting your own past onto someone who had done nothing. And only much later, after the cost had been paid in full, did you understand that the thing you felt in that first moment had been entirely correct, and that everything painful which followed had already been visible to you, in miniature. At the very beginning, I have noticed that the body knows before the mind consents to know. Something in you registers the discrepancy long before you have words for it. A flicker of tension in the chest, a reluctance you cannot justify, a wish, oddly specific, to leave a room. You have no reason to leave. These are not random sensations. They are the reports of a faculty far older than reason, a kind of perception that operates beneath the threshold of conscious thought, gathering thousands of small signals and arriving at a conclusion before consciousness has even formed the question. The disturbing thing is not that this faculty exists. The disturbing thing is how systematically we have trained ourselves to override it. We have learned to distrust the very part of us that perceives most accurately, and to trust instead the part that rationalizes, the part that constructs reasonable explanations for why the alarm we just heard does not really mean anything. What interests me is the speed of the override, because it tells you something about its purpose. The intuition arrives, and almost instantly a second voice arrives to silence it. And the second voice is fluent, persuasive, and full of good reasons. He is probably just tired. She did not mean it that way. Everyone has bad moments. I am being judgmental. This second voice presents itself as maturity, as fairness, as the generous interpretation that a good person ought to extend. But notice what it is actually doing. It is not weighing the evidence. It is dismissing the evidence in advance, before any weighing can occur. The override does not engage with what you perceived. It declares that what you perceived should not be perceived. And it does this so quickly and so smoothly that you experience the dismissal as wisdom rather than as the suppression it actually is. The question that should trouble you is why? Why would a mind work so hard to talk itself out of accurate perception? The answer is that seeing the red flag clearly would require something the psyche does not want to give. It would require action. If you fully admit that the person in front of you is dangerous, or dishonest, or unwell, then you are obligated to respond. And the response is costly. It may mean ending something you have invested in. It may mean disappointing someone, or being disliked, or being alone, or being wrong in front of others who do not see what you see. So the mind performs a calculation it never shows you. It weighs the discomfort of acting on the truth against the comfort of denying it. And very often it chooses denial. Not because denial is correct, but because denial is cheaper. The red flag is not ignored because it was invisible. It is ignored because seeing it would cost too much. We do not fail to perceive danger. We decline to. I want you to consider the figure of the person who tells you, early, exactly who they are. It happens far more often than we admit. A man says, half joking, that he ruins everything good in his life. And you laugh. And you file it under self-deprecation. And you do not hear it as the confession it was. A woman says she does not really do feelings. And you decide she is guarded rather than absent. And you appoint yourself the one who will reach her. People announce their nature constantly. in small, unguarded sentences. And we have a remarkable capacity to receive these announcements as charming quirks rather than as the warnings they are. There is a Jungian principle here that runs deeper than mere observation. We do not see the other person. We see our projection of them, the figure we have built out of our own needs, our own hopes, our own unlived wishes. And we superimpose this figure so completely over the actual human being that the real person becomes nearly invisible. The red flag is a moment when the real person briefly shows through the projection. And the override exists precisely to repair the projection, to paint back over the place where reality leaked through. This is why the people most vulnerable to ignoring red flags are not the foolish but the hopeful. It takes a powerful inner image to override the senses. The person who wants nothing is rarely deceived, because they have nothing invested in the deception. But the person who longs for love, for rescue, for a family that finally works, for the partner who will redeem the disappointments of all the previous ones, that person carries an image so charged with need that it will overwrite almost any evidence. They are not blind. They are too full of vision. A vision that comes from within and is projected outward with such force that the actual human being cannot compete with it. And so they fall in love not with a person but with a possibility. And they defend the possibility against the person. And every red flag becomes not information, but an obstacle to be reasoned away so that the cherished image can survive intact a little longer. Let me give you an image to hold. Imagine standing at the edge of a still lake at dusk. And beneath the surface, in the dim water, you see a shape. You cannot make out what it is. It is large, and it does not move the way the water moves. And something in you goes cold at the sight of it. Now, you have two choices. You can lean closer and look, accepting that what you see may frighten you and may demand something of you. Or you can decide that it is only a trick of the fading light, a reflection of the clouds, a shadow cast by the trees. And you can step back and continue your walk and tell yourself there was nothing there. The lake does not care which you choose. The shape remains in the water either way, but the person who looked will walk away changed, carrying a true and uncomfortable knowledge, while the person who turned aside will walk away lighter and will return to that same lake again and again, and will be surprised each time by what eventually rises from it. The shape in the water is the thing you already perceived and refused to name. Refusing to name it does not remove it. It only removes your readiness for it. What happens? Then, when you stop ignoring the red flags, the first thing that happens is not relief. I want to be honest about this, because the language of awareness is usually sold as a kind of liberation, and the reality is far less comfortable. The first thing that happens is grief. When you finally let yourself see what you have been refusing to see, you do not feel free. You feel the loss of the image you had built. You grieve the person you hoped they were, the relationship you thought you were in, the future you had already half lived in your mind. And underneath that grief is a sharper one. The recognition that some part of you knew all along, that the knowledge was available to you from the first moment, and that you spent your effort not on missing the truth but on unseeing it. This is a strange and specific kind of pain. The pain of discovering that you were never deceived by anyone but yourself. The other person showed you who they were. You were the one who looked away. But this grief, unlike the comfort of denial, leads somewhere. The override keeps you in a loop. You meet the same kind of person again and again. You feel the same early warning again and again. You talk yourself out of it again and again. And you call the result bad luck, as though the pattern were happening to you rather than through you. To stop ignoring the red flags is to step out of that loop. And stepping out begins with a question that has nothing to do with the other person. The question is not, why do these people keep appearing in my life? The question is, what in me keeps overriding what I perceive? What image am I so committed to that I will discard my own senses to protect it? What did I learn, somewhere far back, that taught me my perceptions were not to be trusted? That the safe thing was to doubt myself, rather than to doubt the person who unsettled me? Because the override is learned. No child is born distrusting its own alarm. Somewhere, the child was taught that what it felt was wrong, that the discomfort it sensed in a room was its own imagination, that the safe and loving thing to do was to override the body and believe the reassuring words instead. The adult who cannot see red flags is often an adult who was trained with great thoroughness not to. There is a deeper layer still, and it is the one most people never reach. The red flags you ignore in others are very often the same qualities you have refused to face in yourself. The shadow is not only what we hide from the world, it is what we hide from our own awareness. The disowned material that we cannot tolerate as our own and therefore cannot recognize when it appears in front of us. The person who has never admitted their own capacity for cruelty will fail, repeatedly, to recognize cruelty in others. Because to recognize it would be to risk recognizing it in themselves. The person who has buried their own dishonesty will be the easiest to deceive. Because perceiving deception requires being on speaking terms with the deceiver inside. We are blind, precisely and selectively, to the flaws we share. And so the work of learning to see red flags is not, in the end, a matter of becoming more suspicious of others. It is a matter of becoming more honest about yourself. The clearer you become about your own shadow, the less you need anyone else to carry it for you, and the less you will be drawn, against all evidence, toward people who are living out the parts of yourself you have refused to live. I think often about the moment of stillness I described. The moment when something in you goes quiet and watchful at the very beginning. That stillness is not paranoia, and it is not the wound of the past distorting the present, though we are quick to call it both in order to dismiss it. That stillness is the oldest and most reliable intelligence you possess. The part of you that perceived the shape in the water before your mind invented reasons to look away. When you stop ignoring the red flags, you are not acquiring a new skill. You are returning authority to a faculty that always worked, that was always reporting accurately, and that you had simply been overruling for so long that you forgot it was speaking. To honor it again is a kind of homecoming, though not a comfortable one, because it means you can no longer pretend you did not know. The cost of seeing is that you become responsible for what you see. There is no way back to the innocence of the override, and there should not be. You will still feel the lonely pull of the cherished image. You will still meet the person who tells you, in the first hour, exactly who they are, and you will feel that old familiar voice rise up, fluent and reasonable, ready to explain the danger away. What is different now is only this. You will recognize the voice, and in the half second before you would have once believed it, you will remember the lake, and the shape in the water, and the long walks you took afterward, telling yourself there had been nothing there. And you will understand that the stillness you feel in your chest is not your imagination, but your oldest companion, trying once more, as it always has, to tell you something you already know. Whether you lean closer this time, or step back into the comfortable dark, will not depend on what you perceive. You have always perceived it. It will depend only on what you are now. Finally, willing to